There's a moment when you watch someone destroy their entire career in a single decision. Not through scandal, not through incompetence, but through one fatal miscalculation. They choose to compete where they cannot win, and Machiavelli would have seen it coming from miles away. Picture this. You're in a meeting. Your boss presents a challenge. 3 people immediately volunteer, including you. But here's what you don't see. One of them has inside information. Another has already secured backing from key stakeholders. The third? That's you, walking blind into a rigged game, thinking effort equals victory. This is the survival law Machiavelli understood before anyone else. The battlefield chooses the victor before the first move is made. Your skill, your dedication, your brilliant strategy, none of it matters if you're fighting the wrong war. Because the strong don't win through strength alone. They win by never entering battles they can't dominate. The average person believes competition is fair. They think hard work conquers all. They assume merit rises to the top. Machiavelli would call this dangerous naivety, because while you're playing by the rules, others are rewriting them. While you're perfecting your technique, they're buying the judges. While you're training harder, they're making sure you never reach the starting line. Let's get surgical about this. Competition isn't about being the best. It's about controlling the variables that determine who gets to be called the best. When you compete where you can't win, you don't just lose. You hand your enemies a public victory. You validate their superiority. You become their stepping stone to power. Think about every corporate promotion you've ever witnessed. Did the most qualified person always get it? Or did it go to the person who understood that qualifications were just one variable in an equation they'd already solved? The Machiavellian sees what others miss. He doesn't ask, am I good enough? He asks, can I control the outcome? Here's the brutal truth. Every competition has hidden rules, unspoken alliances, pre-existing hierarchies, information asymmetries, political undercurrents, resource disparities. When you ignore these factors, you're not competing. You're performing. And performance without strategy is just expensive entertainment for those who actually hold power. Consider social media influence. You see someone with millions of followers and think, I can create better content. So you pour months into videos, posts, engagement tactics. You optimize, you hustle, you grind. But what you don't see is their network of cross-promotions, their financial backing, their algorithmic advantages, their team of professionals. You're competing with your talent against their system. That's not competition. That's self-destruction. The Machiavellian principle is ruthless in its simplicity. Never fight where the deck is stacked against you. Never compete where others control the rules. Never enter an arena where your victory depends on their permission. Because the moment you need their approval to win, you've already lost. But here's where it gets deeper. Knowing you can't win isn't enough. You have to recognize it before you enter. Because once you're in the game, pride takes over. Sunk cost fallacy kicks in. You tell yourself you're learning, growing, building character. But what you're really doing is bleeding resources while your competitors get stronger. Machiavelli would study the successful and notice something the masses miss. They don't win because they're the best at what they do. They win because they only do what they can dominate. The tech entrepreneur doesn't compete with established giants on their terms. He creates a new category where he can be the only player. The politician doesn't fight established incumbents on their ground. She shifts the conversation to issues where she has natural advantages. This is why most people stay mediocre. They mistake activity for strategy. They confuse effort with intelligence. They believe showing up is enough. But the Machiavellian knows better. Showing up to the wrong fight is worse than not showing up at all. Because failure in the wrong arena damages your reputation in every arena. Let's examine the psychology of why people compete where they can't win. First, ego. They need to prove they belong in elite spaces. Second, ignorance. They don't understand the real game being played. Third, desperation. They have no other options, so they take bad bets. Fourth, social pressure. Everyone expects them to compete, so they do, but here's what they miss. The moment you compete where you can't win, you're no longer playing offense. You're playing defense. You're reacting to others' moves instead of making them react to yours. You're optimizing for their game instead of creating your own. And defensive players rarely control outcomes. The Machiavellian flips this entirely. Instead of asking, how can I beat them? He asks, how can I make this competition irrelevant? Instead of trying to win their game, he creates a new game where he makes the rules. Instead of fighting for their approval, he builds a system where their opinion doesn't matter. This isn't about avoiding challenge. It's about choosing your battles with surgical precision. Every resource you spend on unwinnable competitions is a resource not spent on winnable ones. Every moment you're grinding in their arena is a moment not spent building your own. Every defeat in the wrong war makes victory in the right war harder to achieve. Machiavelli understood that power isn't distributed equally. Some people have structural advantages. Some have information advantages. Some have resource advantages. Some have network advantages. When you compete against structural disadvantages, you're not brave. You're naive. And naive players don't survive long in power games. The fatal mistake isn't losing. It's competing where loss is inevitable. Because when you lose in public, you don't just lose once. You lose every future opportunity that depends on the perception of your capability. You lose credibility. You lose respect. You lose the resources that could have been deployed in winnable situations. Smart competitors study the battlefield before entering. They analyze the players, the rules, the resources, the politics, the timeline, the metrics. They ask hard questions. Who really decides the winner? What factors matter most? Where are the landmines? What advantages do others have that I don't? Can I neutralize those advantages? Can I change the game? If the answers reveal you can't win, the Machiavellian response is simple. Don't play. Redirect your energy toward competitions where you have natural advantages. Build strength in areas where you can dominate. Wait for better opportunities. Create your own opportunities. But never, ever enter a fight where victory requires miracles. Because in the end, survival isn't about proving yourself to everyone. It's about proving yourself where it matters, when it matters, in ways that matter. And the person who never competes where they can't win, they never have to recover from preventable defeats. They enter every battle from a position of strength. And that's how empires are built. One strategic choice at a time. The game is rigged, but not in the way most people think. It's not rigged by conspiracy or corruption. It's rigged by information, timing, and access. And by the time you realize you're playing, the winners have already been decided. Machiavelli would watch modern power games with grim satisfaction. Nothing has changed. The powerful still use the same tactics he documented centuries ago. They control the rules, the timeline, the resources, and most importantly, the information. They don't beat you with superior skill. They beat you by making sure you never had a real chance to begin with. Here's how it works. Let's say a new market opportunity emerges. Revolutionary technology, unexplored niche, regulatory change that creates space for innovation. You read about it online, get excited, start planning your entry. But what you don't know is that insiders have been tracking this opportunity for months. They've already secured key partnerships, locked up critical resources, established regulatory relationships, and positioned themselves for dominance. You think you're early. You think you're being entrepreneurial. But you're actually playing cleanup crew in someone else's strategy. They needed small players to validate the market, create competition theater, and provide eventual acquisition targets. Your opportunity was their plan all along. This is the Machiavellian insight that destroys naive competitors. Power players don't just participate in games. They design them. They don't react to opportunities. They create them. They don't compete for position. They determine what positions are available and who gets to occupy them. Corporate world, same pattern. Job openings are posted publicly, but the decision was made weeks earlier. They already know who they want. The interview process is legal theater, designed to show due diligence while confirming a predetermined choice. You prepare, research, optimize your resume, nail the interview. But you're competing for a position that was never really open. The powerful understand something fundamental about competition that others miss. Information asymmetry is the ultimate advantage. When they know something you don't, when they see moves coming that you can't, when they understand the real rules while you're playing by the apparent ones, they don't need to be better than you. They just need to be better informed. Think about financial markets. Retail investors read the same news, use the same platforms, access the same data as everyone else. But institutional players have different information entirely. They know about moves before they happen, understand market mechanics at a deeper level, have access to research and analysis that retail investors never see. It's not insider trading, it's structural advantage. And by the time retail investors act on public information, the real players have already positioned themselves for the next 3 moves. Dating markets reveal the same dynamics. You think you're competing for someone's attention based on charm, looks, compatibility, but what you don't see is the social proof they already possess. The network effects working in their favor. The information they have about what that person actually values. The pre-existing relationships that give them context and credibility you can't match. The Machiavellian doesn't get angry about this. He studies it. He learns how power players create these advantages. He understands that crying unfair is the response of someone who doesn't understand the game. The game isn't unfair. You just don't know what game is actually being played. Here's the deeper mechanism. Powerful players don't announce their intentions. They don't telegraph their strategies. They don't reveal their preparation. They create the appearance of open competition while ensuring the outcome heavily favors them. Not through cheating, but through superior positioning, better information, stronger networks, and longer-term thinking. Let's examine social influence. You see someone become famous and think, I can do that too. You start creating content, building audience, engaging with others. But what you don't realize is that their success came from advantages invisible to you. Maybe they had financial backing to focus full-time while you're working weekends. Maybe they had network access that provided collaboration opportunities. Maybe they understood algorithmic mechanics that you're still figuring out. Maybe they had professional skills in areas you're learning through trial and error. You're not competing with their visible output. You're competing with their entire ecosystem of advantages. And ecosystems take years to build, while individual efforts take weeks to burn out. The most sophisticated form of rigging is expectation management. Power players create the impression that competition is meritocratic, while ensuring that merit isn't the deciding factor. They promote stories of hard work and talent, while quietly leveraging systemic advantages. They celebrate fairness publicly, while using information asymmetries privately. This creates a perfect trap for naive competitors. They believe the narrative about merit-based success. They assume everyone starts from similar positions. They think effort and skill will be enough. So they pour resources into improvement instead of position, technique instead of information, practice instead of access. Meanwhile, the real players are securing advantages that make technique irrelevant. They're building relationships that provide insider knowledge. They're positioning themselves in networks that offer opportunities before they become public. They're accumulating resources that allow them to take bigger risks with smaller downside. The timeline manipulation is particularly brutal. By the time you recognize an opportunity and begin competing for it, they've been preparing for months or years. Your best effort is competing with their preparation. Your excitement is competing with their infrastructure. Your hustle is competing with their system. Machiavelli would point out that this isn't evil or unfair. It's strategic. Power players understand that competition is expensive and uncertain. So they invest in making competition irrelevant. They don't outwork you. They make your work less effective. They don't outcompete you. They compete in different categories where you can't follow. The information advantage compounds over time. Each successful venture provides data for the next one. Each network connection creates opportunities for new connections. Each resource gained makes it easier to gain more resources. While you're starting from scratch each time, they're building on accumulated advantages. Smart people fall for this because they overestimate the importance of intelligence and underestimate the importance of position. They think being smarter means they can overcome structural disadvantages. But intelligence without information is just sophisticated guessing. Skill without access is just impressive performance with no audience that matters. The rigging isn't obvious because it doesn't need to be. When you control the inputs, you control the outputs without appearing to manipulate anything. When you shape the context, you influence the content without dictating it. When you determine what information is available when, you guide decisions without making them. This is why most people never recognize they're playing rigged games. The rigging is subtle, structural, and systemic. It looks like natural advantages, timing differences, or resource disparities. It feels like bad luck or insufficient effort. But it's actually systematic positioning that ensures certain outcomes while maintaining the appearance of fair competition. The Machiavellian response isn't to complain about rigged games. It's to understand how games get rigged, so you can either avoid them entirely or learn to rig them in your favor. Because once you understand the mechanics of systematic advantage creation, you stop being a victim of other people's strategies and start becoming the architect of your own. The deadliest competitors are the ones you never see coming. They don't announce their intentions, broadcast their capabilities, or telegraph their moves. They operate in shadows while others perform in spotlights. And by the time you recognize the threat, they've already positioned themselves for victory. Machiavelli understood this principle better than anyone. True power moves in silence. Real strategy unfolds without explanation. The most dangerous players are those who appear harmless until the moment they strike. They cultivate strategic invisibility, not hiding from the game, but hiding their true position within it. Most people do the opposite. They signal their ambitions loudly. They showcase their skills constantly. They announce their plans proudly. They compete for attention, recognition, and validation. But every revelation is ammunition for competitors. Every display of strength shows potential enemies exactly what they're up against and how to counter it. Consider the entrepreneur who builds in stealth mode versus the one who posts progress updates daily. The silent builder accumulates advantages while others waste energy on visibility. He secures partnerships while competitors are still building prototypes. He locks up talent while others are still debating strategy. He launches when ready while others are still promising. By the time his competition realizes what happened, the game is over. This isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about understanding that information is power, and sharing information diminishes your advantage. When you reveal your capabilities, others can plan counters. When you announce your intentions, others can move to block you. When you show your resources, others can target your weaknesses. The Machiavellian operates on need-to-know basis. He shares only what advances his position and conceals everything that could be used against him. He appears cooperative while remaining strategically opaque. He seems open while keeping crucial information protected. He builds trust without creating vulnerability. Smart players understand that most people can't resist the urge to impress. They want credit for their insights, recognition for their efforts, validation for their strategies. This need for acknowledgement creates predictable weaknesses that can be exploited. The person who can't keep secrets about their own success will never achieve the level of success that requires discretion. Let's examine this in corporate environments. The employee who constantly updates everyone on their projects, achievements, and strategies thinks they're building visibility and credibility. But what they're actually doing is providing intelligence to competitors within the organization. Colleagues learn their methods, timing, resources, and weak points. When promotion opportunities arise, others are prepared with specific counters to their advantages. Meanwhile, the strategically invisible player works quietly, builds alliances discreetly, accumulates achievements without fanfare, and positions themselves carefully. They understand that internal competition is just as brutal as external competition, and information security is just as important as performance quality. The principle applies to personal relationships as well. The person who broadcasts every romantic interest, career move, and life decision creates a public record that others can analyze for patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities. They make themselves predictable, which makes them manageable. But the strategically invisible person maintains mystery. Others can't predict their next moves because they don't have enough data. They can't manipulate them easily because they don't understand their true motivations. They can't compete with them effectively because they don't know their real capabilities or resources. Machiavelli would note that invisibility isn't just about hiding. It's about controlling narrative. The visible player allows others to define their story. The invisible player maintains control over how they're perceived and understood. They reveal selected information at strategic moments to create desired impressions while keeping their full picture hidden. This creates a fascinating psychological advantage. People fear what they don't understand. They overestimate mysterious opponents and underestimate transparent ones. The player who keeps their cards hidden is assumed to have better cards than the player who shows them. Uncertainty breeds caution, and caution creates opportunities for the prepared. The timing element is crucial. Strategic invisibility isn't permanent. It's situational. Smart players know when to remain hidden and when to emerge. They stay invisible during preparation phases and become visible at execution moments. They hide while building position and reveal when claiming victory. Think about successful acquisitions or takeovers. The acquiring company doesn't announce their intentions early. They work quietly, secure funding, analyze targets, build legal structures, and position themselves strategically. Only when they're ready to act do they become visible. By then, it's too late for effective countermeasures. The same pattern applies to career advancement. The person destined for promotion doesn't campaign publicly. They build relationships privately, demonstrate value consistently, align with key decision-makers strategically, and position themselves inevitably. When the opportunity arises, they're the obvious choice, not the desperate candidate. Social media reveals how poorly most people understand strategic invisibility. They share their goals, progress, setbacks, strategies, and resources publicly. They think transparency builds trust and accountability, but what it actually does is provide competitive intelligence to anyone paying attention. Their successes can be studied and replicated. Their failures can be exploited and leveraged. The strategically invisible person uses social media differently. They share selectively, reveal progressively, and maintain control over their narrative. They appear engaged without being exposed. They seem authentic without being vulnerable. They build presence without providing blueprints. There's a deeper psychological component to strategic invisibility. It requires emotional discipline. Most people crave validation, recognition, and approval. They want credit for their insights and praise for their efforts. Strategic invisibility means sacrificing immediate gratification for long-term advantage. This delayed gratification separates serious players from attention-seeking performers. The person who needs constant validation will always reveal too much too soon. They'll compromise strategic position for emotional satisfaction. They'll trade long-term advantage for short-term recognition. But the Machiavellian player understands that the most satisfying victories are those achieved through superior positioning rather than superior performance. It's more satisfying to win through strategy than through effort. It's more sustainable to win through intelligence than through intensity. The practical implementation requires discipline across multiple areas. Information discipline, sharing only what serves your strategy. Emotional discipline, resisting the urge for immediate validation. Social discipline, maintaining relationships without revealing position. Strategic discipline, staying focused on outcomes rather than recognition. Most people fail at strategic invisibility because they mistake visibility for progress. They think being seen is the same as moving forward. They confuse activity with advancement. But the Machiavellian knows that real progress often happens in darkness, and real victories are often won before anyone realizes a competition was taking place. The ultimate paradox of strategic invisibility is that it makes you more powerful by appearing less powerful. You gain influence by seeming unambitious. You accumulate advantages by appearing disadvantaged. You control outcomes by letting others think they're in control. And when you finally emerge from strategic invisibility to claim your position, others wonder how it happened so quickly. They didn't see you coming because you didn't let them. They couldn't counter your moves because they didn't know you were making them. They couldn't compete with your strategy because they never understood your game. That's the art of strategic invisibility. By the time others realize you are playing, you've already won. There's a moment when smart competitors stop trying to win existing games and start creating entirely new ones. They realize that fighting for position in someone else's hierarchy is always a losing proposition. So they build their own hierarchy, where they automatically occupy the top position. Machiavelli would recognize this as the ultimate power move. Don't compete where others set the rules. Create the rules yourself. Don't fight for market share. Create new markets. Don't try to become the best player in their game. Become the only player in your game. This is how real empires are built. Not by defeating existing powers, but by making existing powers irrelevant. Not by winning competitions, but by redefining what winning means. Not by playing better, but by changing what game gets played. Consider how technology disrupts industries. Netflix didn't beat Blockbuster by opening better video stores. They made video stores obsolete. Uber didn't outcompete taxi companies with better taxis. They redefined what transportation could look like. Tesla didn't build better gas engines. They made gas engines yesterday's technology. Each created their own category, where traditional competitors couldn't follow. They didn't improve existing solutions. They created entirely new problems to solve. They didn't optimize current systems. They built replacement systems that made current ones irrelevant. This is the Machiavellian insight that transforms everything. When you create your own category, you automatically become the leader of that category. When you define the rules, you can make sure those rules favor your strengths and neutralize others' advantages. When you control the narrative, you determine what success looks like. Most people miss this opportunity because they think in terms of improvement rather than replacement. They ask, how can I do this better? Instead of, how can I make this unnecessary? They focus on optimization rather than innovation. They compete for efficiency gains instead of categorical advantages. But category creation requires a different mindset entirely. You have to see problems others don't recognize. You have to imagine solutions others can't conceive. You have to build capabilities others don't possess. You have to communicate value others don't understand. Let's examine this in personal branding. Most people try to become the best at existing categories. The best marketing consultant, the best fitness coach, the best financial advisor. They compete on qualifications, experience, results, and price. They're fighting for position in crowded hierarchies where differentiation is difficult and competition is constant. But category creators approach it differently. They identify unique intersections of their skills, experiences, and interests that don't currently exist as recognized categories. They become the only person who combines specific expertise in ways that create entirely new value propositions. The marketing consultant becomes the only person who helps introverted entrepreneurs build influence without social media. The fitness coach becomes the only person who designs workout routines, specifically for people who travel constantly for work. The financial advisor becomes the only person who helps creative professionals build wealth while maintaining artistic integrity. Suddenly, they're not competing with thousands of similar providers. They're the only option for people with those specific needs. They've created their own category where competition doesn't exist because competitors can't replicate their unique combination of capabilities and positioning. This requires deep understanding of your own advantages, not just skills, but experiences, perspectives, networks, and contexts that others can't easily duplicate. The Machiavellian analyzes his unique position and builds categories around strengths that others cannot match. Category creation also requires market education. People don't automatically understand new categories. They need to be taught why the category matters, what problems it solves, and why existing solutions are inadequate. This is why category creators are often excellent storytellers. They have to sell the category before they can sell their solution. The timing element is crucial. Create categories too early and markets aren't ready. Create them too late, and others have already established dominance. The sweet spot is identifying emerging needs that existing categories don't address well, then building solutions that perfectly fit those needs. Smart category creators also understand that categories need to be defensible. It's not enough to create something new if others can easily copy it. The best categories are built around sustainable competitive advantages that become stronger over time rather than weaker. Network effects are particularly powerful for category defense. If your category becomes more valuable as more people participate, you can maintain dominance even as competitors enter. The first social network that achieves critical mass becomes the dominant social network because users go where other users already are. Data advantages work similarly. If your category generates proprietary data that improves your offering over time, you stay ahead of competitors who start with less data. The recommendation algorithm gets better with more users, making it harder for new entrants to compete on quality. Brand advantages compound as well. Being first in a category often means your brand becomes synonymous with the category itself. People don't search for tissues, they ask for Kleenex. They don't make photocopies, they make Xerox copies. Category creators can own the language people use to describe the entire space. The psychological aspect of category creation is fascinating. People prefer to be pioneers rather than followers. They want to be associated with innovation rather than imitation. When you create a new category, early adopters feel like they're discovering something special rather than choosing between similar options. This creates evangelical customers who promote your category, not just your solution. They become advocates for the entire concept, which benefits you disproportionately as the category leader. Their word-of-mouth marketing sells the category, which automatically sells your position within it. But category creation isn't without risks. New categories can fail if markets aren't ready, if the value proposition isn't clear, or if execution isn't excellent. You might create something genuinely innovative that nobody wants. You might solve problems people don't think they have. The Machiavellian approach to category creation balances innovation with market validation. Test concepts before full commitment. Build minimum viable categories before investing in complete solutions. Validate demand before scaling supply. Most importantly, understand that category creation is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. Categories evolve as markets mature. Competitors enter as categories prove viable. Customer needs change as solutions improve. Successful category creators stay ahead by continuously redefining their categories. They don't just create once and defend forever. They keep innovating within their space, extending their categories into adjacent areas and building deeper moats around their position. The ultimate goal isn't just to avoid competition. It's to make competition irrelevant by operating in spaces where others can't effectively compete. When you successfully create and own a category, you don't fight for market share. You define what the market looks like. That's how you move from playing games others created to creating games others play. And once you're writing the rules, winning becomes significantly more predictable. Time is the ultimate weapon in strategic warfare, but most people treat it as the enemy. They want results immediately, recognition quickly, and success now. This impatience creates predictable weaknesses that patient players can exploit systematically. And Machiavelli understood that whoever can wait the longest usually wins everything. The modern world amplifies this weakness. Social media rewards immediate reactions. Markets celebrate quarterly results. Culture glorifies overnight success. But real power accumulates slowly, compounds quietly, and reveals itself suddenly when conditions align perfectly. Patient players understand something fundamental that impatient ones miss. Every rushed decision is an opportunity for someone else. Every hasty move reveals information that can be used against you. Every demand for immediate results forces suboptimal choices that create long-term disadvantages. Think about investment markets. Impatient traders react to daily fluctuations, chase trends, and optimize for quick gains. They buy high when excitement peaks and sell low when fear dominates. Their emotional cycles create predictable patterns that patient investors exploit systematically. Meanwhile, patient investors ignore short-term noise, focus on fundamental value, and wait for optimal opportunities. They buy when others panic and sell when others celebrate. They understand that markets reward patience more generously than they reward activity. The same principle applies to career development. Impatient professionals jump between opportunities, optimize for immediate advancement, and prioritize short-term benefits. They switch jobs for small salary increases, chase trendy industries, and abandon strategies before they mature. But patient professionals play longer games. They build expertise systematically, develop relationships strategically, and position themselves for opportunities that may not emerge for years. They understand that career success compounds over decades, not quarters. Machiavelli would note that patience isn't passive waiting. It's active preparation during waiting periods. Patient players use time others waste to build capabilities, accumulate resources, strengthen positions, and prepare for moments when action becomes optimal. This creates an enormous advantage when opportunities finally arise. While impatient competitors scramble to react, patient players execute plans they've been developing for months or years. They're prepared for scenarios others didn't anticipate, positioned for outcomes others can't achieve, and ready for timing others can't match. Consider business cycles. Impatient entrepreneurs launch during market peaks when competition is fierce and costs are high. They fight for attention in crowded spaces and burn resources chasing overheated opportunities. Patient entrepreneurs prepare during market downturns when attention is available and costs are low. They build during quiet periods, launch when conditions improve, and capture market share while competitors recover from previous mistakes. The psychological component is crucial. Impatience creates anxiety, which leads to reactive decision-making. Impatient players feel pressure to act, even when action isn't optimal. They mistake activity for progress and movement for advancement. But patience creates calm, which enables strategic thinking. Patient players can wait for better opportunities because they're not desperate for immediate results. They can make optimal choices because they're not constrained by artificial urgency. This emotional discipline becomes a competitive advantage. When others panic, patient players remain steady. When others rush, patient players stay deliberate. When others react, patient players continue executing long-term strategies. The compounding effect of patience is extraordinary. Each patient decision builds on previous patient decisions. Each long-term choice creates more options for future long-term choices. Each delayed gratification increases capacity for future delayed gratification. Impatient competitors, meanwhile, compound their disadvantages. Each hasty decision constrains future options. Each short-term optimization creates long-term problems. Each immediate gratification reduces resources available for better opportunities. The information advantage is significant. Patient players observe longer cycles, recognize deeper patterns, and understand broader contexts. They see how situations evolve over time, rather than just snapshots of current conditions. Impatient players focus on immediate data, react to recent events, and optimize for current circumstances. They miss the larger trends that patient players use to predict future opportunities and position accordingly. Social dynamics reveal the power of patience clearly. Impatient people demand immediate responses, constant attention, and quick resolutions. This creates stress in relationships and limits their network quality to others who operate at similar speeds. Patient people allow relationships to develop naturally, give others time to process and respond, and focus on long-term mutual benefit. This creates deeper, more valuable networks that provide better opportunities over time. The Machiavellian player uses others' impatience strategically. When competitors demand quick decisions, he can extract concessions by controlling the timeline. When others need immediate results, he can negotiate better terms by offering faster delivery. When markets panic, he can acquire assets at discounted prices. Patience also creates optionality. Patient players don't have to take the first opportunity that appears. They can wait for better options, negotiate from stronger positions, and choose optimal timing for major moves. Impatient players, driven by urgency, must take whatever opportunities are immediately available. They negotiate from weaker positions because they need quick resolution. They accept suboptimal terms because they can't wait for better ones. The strategic application of patience requires discipline across multiple dimensions. Financial discipline to survive without immediate revenue. Emotional discipline to remain calm during uncertainty. Social discipline to resist pressure for quick action. Strategic discipline to maintain focus on long-term objectives. Most people fail at patience because they underestimate how long meaningful change takes and overestimate what they can accomplish in short periods. They expect linear progress, but encounter cyclical reality. They plan for steady advancement, but experience irregular development. Patient players understand that progress isn't linear, success isn't immediate, and value accumulates over time periods that exceed most people's planning horizons. They prepare for scenarios that may take years to unfold and position for opportunities that may not emerge for decades. The ultimate patience play is building systems that work better over time rather than strategies that work once. Patient players create repeatable processes, compound their advantages systematically, and design approaches that become more powerful as time passes. This is why patience destroys impatient competitors. It's not just about waiting longer. It's about using time more strategically, building more sustainable advantages, and positioning for outcomes that impatient players can't even imagine. When patient players finally move, they move with accumulated force that impatient competitors can't match. They have deeper resources, better positions, superior information, and more options. They've prepared for the moment, while others have been reacting to moments. The final irony is that patient players often appear to succeed overnight, while impatient players appear to struggle constantly. But the overnight success took years of invisible preparation, while the constant struggle comes from repeatedly starting over. That's the power of playing the long game. By the time others realize you were playing, you've already positioned yourself to win. And by the time they try to catch up, you've moved to an entirely different game they didn't know existed. Patience isn't just about waiting. It's about weaponizing time itself against competitors who can't control their need for immediate results. And in a world that rewards speed, the patient player becomes unstoppable precisely because nobody expects them to wait.